What's up, movie viewers? Dena Moviews and Reviews here. Once again, asking, what are you watching? Well, today I am watching Master. This movie stars Regina Hall as Gail Bishop, Zoe Renee as Jasmine Moore, Amber Gray as Liv Beckman, Talia Bosman as Deandra, and Ellen Hunt as Cressida. And it is directed by Mariama Diallo. Let me just start by saying that this movie is listed as a mystery, a thriller, horror, and also a drama. And I think that this movie really tried to be all of these things and more, especially by choosing to invoke the presence of a witch or a ghost into the mix, and constantly referencing a murder that happened to a black student that resided in room 203, or maybe it was room 302. But anyway, this movie had overwhelming symbolism. I mean, it was to the extreme in this movie. It begins with a young black girl by the name of Jasmine, who is a freshman, and she is arriving at this predominantly white college to begin her education. She is assigned the actual room that the murdered black student lived in, that is set to come back every year to choose a student to drag to hell. And you want that room? Okay, so she doesn't seem to believe this and even makes the comment that it takes more than that to scare her. Now, Jasmine is just one of 8 black people in the entire school. This is a college, of course. Now, this white institution is located in New England, and they have also chosen Regina Hall, who plays a character by the name of Gail Bishop, to be their first ever black master. Now, Gail herself was a former student at this university. And as you look at the movie, you start to notice she is pretty much what we would call a token. Now, let me just interject my 2 cents at this point, because I am personally of the mindset that black people goals should never be to be the first black this or the first black that in this society, no matter what it is. Every time that narrative is pushed and I read it, the first black this or the first black that, I feel some kind of way, because it tends to make us subconsciously think that we are competing and should somehow be paralleling so-called white persons' attainments, which is inaccurately seen as the best. And it further wrongfully implies that the Caucasian or white person, your counterpart, is the best or sets the standards. And that is something that we must change. We are saying that it is their standards that we live by, and that determines what is acceptable or successful. And that is one of the greatest mistakes that I think we make as black people. I now and have always considered that to be simply nonsense. I don't want to be labeled the first black anything, the first black nothing at all. I liken that to an original trying to mimic a clone of him. Kinda, almost, but not exactly. You are already that which the clone is not and can never truly be. Yet somehow and very cleverly done, the clone has convinced and confused you purposely, the original, that you are lesser than he or she is, which in my mind is laughable and ignorant of many of us to use that as our guideline for success. Imagine that. The original longing to be like the clone. Sounds kind of crafty, doesn't it? Now, this is what makes us internalize white supremacy in my mind because we have accepted this. Why can't you just be rich? Why just can't you be a good nurse or a good teacher? Why do you have to be compared to a Caucasian? So let's take this series for just a minute and reflect on the fact that black men and black women are the original people of this earth. We are an ancient people as old as time itself, and that alone should change your ideology. And of course we were subconsciously and consciously taught through these educational institutions this myth of white supremacy. It's simply a myth. Black people gave to the world science, math, technology, religion. All of this originated from your ancestors. So it is in your very nature to achieve, as long as you are not oppressed or as long as you are not restricted by a regime or a society that knows your abilities but prevents you from being what it is that you were born or created to be. And because white supremacy is so prevalent and completely intertwined into every aspect of society, every part of our lives, it has confused many of us. It's complicated. It's elusive for some black people to decipher, or some people in general, but there are always going to be those of us who have pulled back the scales from our eyes. We are other than ourselves, and we have the ability to become what we were at one time. And it's slowly happening. But this movie reminded me of the struggle that we are in and have always been in. As long as we are around our oppressors, this is a struggle that we will always have to deal with until we decide that we want different. Now, the ending of this movie left me with a little distress as to the message that it was sending, because this freshman by the name of Jasmine, she endured a lot while she was there. But in the ending, she actually committed suicide on this campus. But once you watch the movie, and the movie is really conflicting and a bit confusing, because she was with her white classmates and they were rude to her and disrespectful to her in many ways. They even, at one point when she attempted to go to a dance, this guy kind of said it had reached capacity and wanted her not to come in. But she always found herself in their presence. Now, like I said, she ended up committing suicide. Now, before doing so, she said she came back from the hospital. She said she had the solution and she knew exactly what to do after being treated badly because of her race. And the next thing you know, she's hanging from the ceiling. And that puzzled me in a sense, because I wondered what kind of message was this sending. Is it saying that we just have to live with being subjugated or kill ourselves? That we will continue to be under the feet of our oppressors and have to live with the many things in society that are geared to cause us pain, harm, or not allow us to have the things in life that white people have? Now, I won't pretend to know the writer or the director's motive with that plot, but I do know that this film may send the wrong message to some. It's really up to the interpreter, I guess. And of course, it was revealed that one of the teachers were pretending to be black, Rachel Dolezal. And she gave Jasmine an F on a good report that she wrote, while giving one of the white students a good grade, and she did poor work. She was doing too much. But in the end, Gail actually decides to walk away from the campus. But I was thinking to myself, you went through all of this. You've experienced so much, you've allowed so much. Now you are leaving. I had a problem with the speech that she gave to Jasmine, who was injured, and she was in the hospital after leaving the institution because she almost lost her life. She was involved with this supernatural experience that caused her to jump from a building. She injured herself. But Gail gave her a speech about returning back to the college. And after, like I said, her almost losing her life, I could not help but notice that Jasmine never called her parents in this movie. She never had any black friends that she corresponded with. And the issues that she was dealing with, she kind of internalized it. And like she was almost a fake character or didn't exist. And that she wrote a weird note. She was typing a note about not being able to come home for the holidays. After experiencing so much hardship, seemed like she would be glad to get a break from the institution. There were just too many unanswered questions, and all of the jumping in and out of scenes. It blurred the lines between what was reality and what was fantasy, and it led me to give this movie a 1 out of 5 stars. In the words of my daughter, they were just doing too much. I watched this movie with my husband, and he got irritated from the constant back and forth in this movie between reality and fantasy. It was just confusing in many aspects. There were dark and spooky moments when somebody is walking up the stairs and they hear this unusual noise, and you think, oh my. Then all of a sudden you realize the film shows it was somebody just happens to wake up from a dream. It just wasn't always clear what was real or a dream sequence. And in fact, it seemed like many of the scenes were kind of random with no real rhyme or reasoning for even being included in the movie. Perhaps the writer or director tried to embark something deep, a deep allegory about race and racism, similar to the movie Get Out. But I do know this will be hit and miss for some, or maybe it was just meant to evoke dialogue, but it'll be hit and miss for many. I just felt like it was too many random scenes that amounted to nothing. Clearly the ghost, the witch, and all the nonsense all had to do with racism and white supremacy and how black people maneuver around it in their lives. And that message may simply be lost in translation for some. Without practical application, explanation, or understanding, it can just be viewed as a hot mess of scenes thrown together with a little bit of fright in it. And to me, it kind of glorified people being prejudiced and white privilege and its ideology. And some might even say promote, and it may convey a message that it's not going anywhere. Like the old white dude said to Gail at the end of the movie, I'm not going anywhere. He wanted Gail to know he's not going anywhere. He repeated it twice. And then it kept showing references of these people that were speaking, and they were on pictures on the wall as if they've been there for years, or they may not even be actually people. They may be ghosts. All of it was a bit confusing, and I think it was an attempt for them to try to make it something to invoke conversation. Now, before I end this, I just want to point out some things in this movie that had me saying, oh, hell no. First thing was, when Jasmine came to the campus, she had this big, puffy, kinky, curly hair. It was black hair, and to me, I love that. And she arrived on campus. But as soon as she was started interacting with her Caucasian friends, her hair became straight, as if she was conforming and trying to be accepted into their group. And secondly, she was constantly surrounded by all Caucasians. And she never interacted with any of the black people that were there on campus. There was one scene where a black girl approached her in the bathroom at the very end, near the end. And I was just wondering, was that an attempt to emphasize our ignorance to the existence of white supremacy and our desire for acceptance in spite of our mistreatment? We just want to be in your presence. And I kept saying, where was her mom and dad? Where are her peeps at? Now, Gail seemed a bit off to me, because this is a black woman who at the beginning of the movie had a key to the vacated house that she would be living in. And this was her home. But she goes to the house and she tries to open the door with the key that she was given. But she can't. She keeps twisting the knob, pushing the door, and so she gives up. She takes out her phone and calls officials and lets them know that the lock is stuck and she can't get into the house, and can they send somebody. But while she is talking on that phone, the door magically unlocks itself and opens. And then she is seen walking inside the house with no acknowledgement or even questioning what just happened. Then she sees footsteps in the house, and she's looking at the footsteps and she's comparing her own shoe print to these footsteps, but she never gets up to go and explore or question or ask anyone where these footprints come from. And perhaps that was a director or writer's intent to prove a point that we have learned to accept and ignore all of the weird, racist things happening around us. We have learned to just internalize it and ignore it. We can scream about it, but we move on and we don't question it anymore. Maybe that was the intent. And I just have to mention that Gail was jogging at night by herself by a grave. Like, really? And am I supposed to believe that part? Not. I was like, come on now. Really? And all the subtle yet racist speech and behaviors from her colleagues, it was just tripping me out. She just let it fly. It was a interesting, scary but not scary movie with so many plots and turns to decipher. The message I took away from this movie was, black people, accept your own and be yourself. Focus on acceptance of self and kind regardless of what our former oppressors and colonizers think. And we must be about the business of building and doing for ourselves. We need our own institution. I've never believed that we need to conform to what society says acceptable or jump through hoops to meet their guidelines. I'm just not one of those people. I think if you want to be a nurse, but we have the ability to teach those classes. We have the ability to build our own schools, to educate our own children, and that is something that we must focus on, and never surrender ourselves to other people who have feelings of grandeur about themselves. When it comes to us, we have to reject the white supremacist philosophy, the white supremacist principles and their standards, and tap into and appreciate the greatness and the beauty that is you. Now, this movie is rated R, and if you would like to check out Master, starring Regina Hall and Zoe Renee, you can do, because it is currently streaming on Prime. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Dena Moviews on YouTube, and leave your comment on any of my movie reviews. Until next time, this is Dena Moviews and Review signing off and reminding you that it's my view. Now, what you watching?